First bit of news we've got is about Oculus Connect 7, although it's no longer called Oculus Connect anymore. It's now called Facebook Connect. For those that don't know,
right?
Yeah, I know, right? We'll touch on that shortly. But for those that are not aware, Oculus Connect is a yearly event generally held in San Jose, California, and it's where sort of Oculus host game developers, content creators like us, news outlets, and basically brings all these people who have a passion for virtual reality together under one roof. I've been to the last 3 Connects, covered stuff from the show floor, and it's always been like a highlight of my year. Like I always really enjoy it, and it's not necessarily because of new hardware or necessarily new games, but it's just being able to meet up with like-minded people who share the same passion and enthusiasm that you do, and being able to talk about something that we love, and that's always
and there's so
amazing.
much going on around that event as well. Like it's just not only the event, but you have like a lot of indie developers or something that organize their own kind of thing in a hotel room near it or something. You just get to experience and see so many things and people that it's just an amazing event.
Yeah, and OC6, bumping into Denny, and he was like, "Hey, I've got this new game. You want to try it out?" And it was just on the concourse. No one knew what Pistol Whip was back then, and you try it out, and then all of a sudden, everyone's talking about Pistol Whip, and it's like kind of like the buzz of the show, and we talked about it on the podcast from the show floor as well.
That was an hilarious video as well, because I was there with I think with Lonely Viper, and me and him were playing Pistol Whip, and you see me playing it, and you see some dude in a Deadpool pistol standing next to me, and then you see just people like passing by as if nothing is happening. It's the only convention where you can see like someone going completely mental with a VR headset on his face, a Deadpool character standing next to him, and then people not even paying attention to it because it's the most normal thing in the world.
I'll never forget that Connect. Sorry, go ahead, Nathan.
No, go for it.
Yeah, go for it.
Just I'll never forget that Connect, just because all of you were there and trying the game for the first time. But the funny kind of backstory there is we were supposed to have a bigger presence at OC6. A bunch of things happened and that didn't happen. So we're like, me and my BD partner Joe Dunlop were like walking around. We're like, let's just show people, like just in the hall, right? And little did we know that it would just kind of keep growing and growing and growing, and suddenly you had this huge line of people playing and really having fun. And it was really cool because it was the first time we had really let anybody outside the studio play it to that degree, and we were still a little nervous. Is it something people like?
We even did the F.Reality show on the show floor there as well. We did it outside, I think, but we made that particular experience like one of the highlights of the entire Oculus event.
Yeah, I did,
which was hilarious as well, because indeed it was just on in like a corridor.
But that's exactly the whole point of those events. It's those things that happen on the sides, on the periphery of the event. But yeah, when you get handed the headset and you try something out, like I remember. Guy Godin, who came along to me at one stage, he's just like, hey Zim, do you want to try something? And I was like, sure. And I put it on. I'm like, oh, neat, a movie browser. And he's like, that's a PC in Canada. I'm like, what? I mean, it's like that kind of thing where, you get that headset demo. You see people putting up these like laptop stands in the corridor, which are a lot of them clearly not sanctioned or anything, and it's just like, that's one of the best parts of the whole venue, is just being able to rock up, get a demo and try something you've never tried before. In some cases that are just like indie dev things that you probably never see released, and that's amazing.
It was especially refreshing because we got invited to come to Connect to try out new hardware and to try out new games. In the end, there were almost no games. So then having, of course, Cloudhead Games to save us all by showing Pistol Whip, I was like, wow, I got to play something, because you guys were just, hey, we know who you guys are. We know who to show it to. Well, if I wanted to try Medal of Honor, and I still want to since I couldn't do that because I had to stand in line for 2 hours. So I mean, it was just nice to be instantly playing this and check it.
And that was the thing. Like the 2 games that really stood out for all of us during the event were Pixel Ripped 1995 and Pistol Whip.
And
the thing is, like, the feedback that we gave Facebook afterwards was like, hey, these 2 games should have been on the show floor. Like that was a big mistake. But anyway,
it's kind of crazy though that Oculus Connect is the last Oculus Connect. Right?
It is, because like I said, it's going to be Facebook Connect from here on out, it seems. And, as we know, real world events aren't happening right now. So we knew a few months ago that it was going to be a digital event going forward. So it's going to be all online. And this week they announced the official date and time. So it's going to take place on the 16th of September at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And you're going to be able to watch the sort of keynote and everything else live on the Facebook Reality Labs Facebook page on Facebook Live. So that's how they're sort of hosting the show this year.
So wait, you said because this year, of course, you can't host any events. It's going to be digital, or it's going to be digital next year too, and the year after. Or
We don't know. We don't know. Obviously, moving forward, but certainly this year it's digital.
I do wonder with the kind of elimination of the Oculus brand and the kind of experience that we had last time, with already far more attention being given to the business aspect of VR, whether that trend is gonna continue with Facebook Connect, because Facebook is also more about the social platform, and Facebook for business was a really big thing at OSU6. So I'm wondering if that trend is going to continue now that it's also become Facebook Connect.
I think what we experienced last year was pretty much Facebook Connect compared to the year before that.
Sure. Yeah, because OC5 was gaming. It was all about gaming. It had location based there. It had the Void there.
From Facebook.
What do you think, Denny? Because from a dev side, I always wonder, because these do tend to be, the spine of the whole thing has been dev centric, and that makes sense. But would you see this potentially going that way, as becoming more developer centric going forward?
ED centric or developer centric? So Facebook for business, you guys were kind of mentioning that you saw a lot of that. I think what's interesting there is I think it's less about business, and it's more about Zuckerberg's push for building a metaverse. The whole, I still believe this with Horizon, that the whole end game here is to establish the very basic roots for that thing that it will eventually become. The thing that eventually will enable full body persistence and real-time body capture and facial capture, and they're starting with this very simple infrastructure, but it's kind of deceptively simple, because it is the thing that will eventually kind of suck users from the Facebook ecosystem into VR eventually, once the hardware shrinks down and everything's kind of established. So I think if there's this kind of, this is just theory on my part, by the way, but
sure.
If there's this Facebook rebranding happening, I think it's more because they're trying to push into a metaverse. Mm-hmm. It's sort of the beginning steps. So they're going to put more emphasis on the way we communicate in VR and all of those types of things.
Good point.
But I believe that gaming is still very much obviously the focus for them in terms of what's actually driving revenue and what's important to most consumers. So it's still going to be pretty well balanced, I think.
Okay. And certainly, Carmack tweeted this week about the event. He said that everything was going to be pre-recorded with nice production values. But he said, I will be giving my talk live in my typical fashion. So although Oculus Connect may not ever be the same, at least we can count on Carmack to never change.
Not ever changing.
Yeah, which I absolutely love about the guy.
He won't take one drink of water for 4 hours.
This is one thing that if you've ever been to a Connect, and you'll witness the greatness of Carmack, he delivers this amazing keynote, very frank and honest. And even last year he was running out of time, so they literally kicked him off the stage. And he hadn't finished his presentation, and he was clearly annoyed. So he just said, right, I'm going to continue this presentation on the concourse. So if you want to come out and listen to me talk, I'll be there. And he did. And then he stood around for another 2-3 hours just talking to the community and answering questions. It was amazing.
To me, when I see him standing in the lobby with all these people around, it's almost like Jesus and his disciples. And that version of it that just, and everyone is everyone's like, ah. But he has so much to say,
Mm-hmm.
And he's also this week I tweeted something about him predicting, standalone and predicting a lot VR wise. And then someone said he's not only predicting it, he also makes it happen. He also builds it. It's insane.
He's also I always took Carmack when I first knew about him. I knew about him through Quake before the whole VR thing kicked off. Like, I always thought of him as kind of, your typical kind of closeted coder who, doesn't have much to say. He's a bit of a rebel. He's got like a rebel spirit in him. And the nice thing is that he's quite straight talking as well. Like if something's not going well on the inside, like during the Oculus, I remember 2015, I think he made some specific comments. Yeah. So like out of everything that's scheduled, I'm most interested in his talk, just to hear what he says about, the current changes and what it means to him. He's now outside of the ring to some extent. So keen to hear what John's got to say.
Absolutely.
We should talk about the rebranding a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because from what I understand, it's not actually, they're not getting rid of Oculus as a trademark or as a name. As far as I know, the event has been rebranded, but in terms of the tech itself, it's still Oculus. But I think a lot of people don't know that. I think a lot of people are assuming it's just becoming Facebook face helmet or something.
Yeah, and it's funny because I tweeted that this week. I said, what's next? They're going to call it the Facebook Quest. But like you say, they're not removing the Oculus name, but they are eroding it to a certain degree because we also saw Oculus Medium being renamed to Medium by Adobe. So they are certainly in some areas eroding away the Oculus brand. And I think, personally, I think that sucks because I've always thought the Oculus brand was a really strong one. And I liked the brand, and I think people in their minds could separate Oculus and Facebook, even though they're one of the same. But they could separate it.
It kind of worked in their favor as well.
It did.
And it's kind of funny because like my wife said something to me that really struck a chord, and she said, "Oh, what a pity." That Oculus is kind of getting cut down a notch a little bit, because she said I'd hoped it would kind of be like Nintendo, like they're from the beginning, they're from grassroots, grew up as this studio, and then just kind of continued on, and it feels a little bit like the shelf life has been cut in half, and maybe we won't see it continue, but
it has also a lot to do, like I also see a lot of people echoing this, where it's like, it's going to be Facebook Quest and Facebook Rift, and now Oculus Connect is also getting screwed over. But a big part is communication from Facebook side, how you announce stuff like this, also how you continue to talk to your consumer base, because they don't really have a spokesman, they don't have a community manager who people can go to say, like, we're concerned, is there more going to change? And if then someone says like no, or they make update videos or do a live, you know what I mean? There you could actually talk some more about this stuff, but as Ken said last week, they make big changes, but you also want to, of course,
I do think that their next headset won't have Oculus in the name anymore, though. And I also don't think it will have Facebook in the name. I think it would just be like for example, like Game Boy, or like
just be called Quest or something. Quest.
Yeah, just one name, and then probably like what they always do, like the buy Facebook, something like
Quest
that.
By Facebook.
The market is
with
still,
Oculus as well.
I mean, the market is still quite small, so you could make these major changes without damaging too much. So if you want to make a change, then this is the moment.
Yeah,
I don't want to see Oculus go, but
we talked about this before, but it's a really tough time, especially for VR devs, in that we live in this highly politicized climate right now, and everything's swirling around Facebook and the complexities there. And then this, like you said, the separation between Facebook and Oculus as brands and kind of identities. And in some ways it's kind of true, because you've got this whole division working solely on VR. And I was saying this earlier, but there's only a handful of companies that can actually bring VR to the masses at scale with the right set of technology, to bring it to the level that we all want it to get to. Almost no one on the planet has the resources that Facebook does to power up VR as a serious hardware platform, and sustain the loss, putting more in than they're getting out initially. We've got Valve, we've got Facebook, we've got Sony, and we've got maybe Microsoft. Like those are kind of the four big companies that can do this properly. But once you start kind of hacking away at the variables, who can actually deliver this many headsets at scale with a certain technology stack that is future facing, all of the things that they're researching and developing. And it really keeps coming back to Facebook and Oculus.
But also who wants to, right? Because not everyone is necessarily interested to do that right now.
Absolutely. There's a lot of trepidation from all of the companies that I just mentioned in terms of how big they are willing to scale, because they're all willing to. They all have the vision, they all have the want, but they have to see the payback, and not some of them aren't necessarily doing that. They also have to have the coffers. They have to have enough money to weather this cycle.
I think the only one that can really
adoption.
compete with that is probably like Amazon. I think they're still one of the ones that are probably in even in a similar market as Facebook are.
I forgot the big one, which was Apple. Because we've been hearing a lot of rumors about Apple's AR VR device, right?
Yep.
They are actually probably the biggest potential competitor with Oculus in maybe the shorter term. So that'll be
an expensive term, I guess, if you're gonna buy one.
Because it's not going to be cheap.
No, it's not gonna be cheap.
Yeah. I'm really curious to see if they're going to roll out an AR VR hybrid device, or if they're going to roll out their sort of first gen AR device on the Apple side. But I also believe that VR is going to deliver the best first AR experience, because there's just so many hard problems with AR still to this day, and like in terms of opacity and field of view, and a really high fidelity pass through camera on a VR headset that's actually got a decent resolution is going to give you like a really compelling AR experience. We don't currently have that hardware, but it wouldn't be feasibly that hard to do.
Yeah, I just think, with the removal of the Oculus brand to a certain degree in some areas, I think Facebook underestimate what the general perception of their brand is. If you just ask the general public, like, what do you think of Facebook? And I think whether it's true or not, they've had such bad press over the last couple of years that is ingrained in people's perceptions. And like I said, whether it's true or not, they think that way. And I think they haven't necessarily done a good job to change that perception at the moment. And I think that's why eroding the Oculus brand is potentially a dangerous thing to do.
It's also a question, like, the people who decide to change stuff like this, are they in touch with the community, the people who actually build the brand in the end, who kickstarted it, and that's where you see the disconnection between the company and the community. Like, you need to build a bridge between that.
Well, we've lost that across the board in VR. There are no good spokespersons for VR anymore. Like, it's become very much a corporate thing for all of them, all of the major players. And I really think that's a disservice to VR in general. Like, you need, because it's still to some degree a nascent market. It's still kind of grassrootsy. It's getting out of that dip, but I still think you need really good spokespeople for that. Is that the right word?
Especially in the gaming scene, where everyone knows who to talk to from Xbox on Twitter, and we have, of course, Shu on the PlayStation side that people love to send their Fall Guys clips to, and and also ask questions, and that's something we want with Oculus too. And for me, back in the days when Palmer was showing off new games and doing live streams, I always felt he was kind of like the person you could at least.
And he was in the trailer. He was in the trailer for like Rock Band VR, wasn't he?
Yeah, smashing the guitar. Yeah, I know. But he kind of had that role, and now it's like we don't really know. Yeah, of course, Mark, but Mark is not going to do the community part on Twitter.
No. Also, just one clarification. Eric Hartley said in the chat that Oculus Medium was sold to Adobe, so that was why they changed the name, was because they were sold, not just the change of name. So thank you for that information. Yeah.
But it does seem like in the last week we've had one change a day. Like, it very much feels like a platter of, like, here's your meal. Okay, you're gonna get your appetizer, and then you're gonna and we're getting all these little like drops. And a lot of people are saying, like, clear the skies before big event in September, and that's pretty clear. Like, get all this stuff out there so you can digest it, settle, and then we can tell you the cool stuff. So I think that's the right way to do it. We spoke in depth last week about these changes, but in terms of Connect itself and that rebranding, I just wanted to say I'm sad. I'm sad to say that there are people who I know were pining to go to an Oculus Connect, and now we'll only go to whatever's left after two major changes, right? We've had, obviously, the whole lockdown era and the kind of semi-permanent or permanent changes to how these types of conventions are going to be portrayed and how people will meet in that way. I mean, I wonder how things like that are going to going to come back again. You know,
this is a this is a 5-year problem. This is not going away next year.
Yeah, this is not a one.
Sorry, this is my own opinion, but this is 5 years until we circle back around to maybe what conventions used to look like. So between these 5 years, we have to figure out what the new way of doing this is, because everything that is out there for a solution right now sucks. It's all bad, because none of it drives organic communication in the way that conventions do, and that's really the most useful part of any convention. Is having organic bump-ins with business partners and friends and developers. It just doesn't happen in the current ecosystem of tools, so it's a hard problem that needs to be solved.
Well,
very true. Very true. So, of course, you know, things that we might expect from the show is, you know, this next Oculus headset that, as you know, we've been talking about it on the show previously. There's images that leaked suggesting it's a new Oculus Quest. So that's likely going to be announced at the show. And then also they might share their plans for augmented reality, like Denny mentioned. And then obviously, of course, Facebook Horizon, which, you know, I would be surprised if they don't launch it during Connect. You know, I think it would make sense to launch it during that event, right?
Well, and launch that kind of Lone Echo 2 as well.
I don't know if that's going to launch at the
every
event.
Every year is like, I don't know when it's ever going to come out.
I kind of feel like Connect has been, you know, you've approached Connect like every year, and there are certain things like headsets, like major hardware, that you generally are on the mark for. But when it comes to software releases, a lot of times what we expect isn't what we end up seeing, even especially when it comes to Oculus's or Facebook's support of indie developers' titles, even big ones like coming from an indie studio. A lot of times they don't even show them. They don't even do a kind of a sizzle reel like they've done in some past Oculus Connect. So I hope to see a little bit more of that in their unveiling, and it'll be interesting to see what that kind of trailer or showcase, the keynote, is going to be this time around.